Asterisk in the quiet chambers of the soul, where shadows lengthen and memories blur, there exists a peculiar hunger. Not for flesh, nor for coin, but for something far more ephemeral, yet infinitely more precious, the face. The very canvas of identity, the fleeting map of self. And sometimes, in the deepest folds of the world, or perhaps the mind, there are those who borrow them. Asterisk. ACTI, the setup. The house stood on the edge of the world, or so it felt to Alara Vance. A sentinel against the perpetual gray of a coastal sky, its gables sharp as a scythe against the low-slung clouds. Moss clung to its stone facade like an old, green memory, and the sea wind, a constant, mournful companion, whispered through its ancient eaves. This was Alara's world, a quiet realm carved from solitude and the scent of damp earth and turpentine. She was an artist, though the term felt too grand, too public for the intimate, almost devotional act of her work. Her canvases were not grand statements, but meditations. Her subjects, almost exclusively, were faces. Not the idealized visages of classical portraiture, but the raw, unvarnished maps of human experience. The subtle twitch of a lip, the silent language of a furrowed brow, the ghost of a smile lingering in the corner of an eye. She sought the unspoken stories etched into the skin, the truths hidden beneath the surface. Alara's studio was the house's largest room, a cavernous space where north light, diffused by the ever-present mist, painted the air in shades of pearl and silver. Canvases leaned against walls, stacked in silent rows, each bearing a face. Some were detailed, almost photographic in their precision, others, mere suggestions, impressions caught in the fleeting dance of shadow and light. She worked with charcoal, with oils, sometimes with clay, her hands moving with an intuitive grace, guided by an unseen current. Her routine was a ritual. Mornings began with the brewing of bitter coffee, the faint scent of it mingling with the lingering ghosts of paint and canvas. Then, to the studio, where she would lose herself for hours, the world outside receding to a distant hum. She rarely left the house, save for essential supplies or the occasional, necessary visit to Dr. Eris Thorne, her kind, elderly psychologist. He would listen patiently to her quiet observations, her vivid dreams, attributing them to an artistic temperament, a sensitive soul. He saw her solitude as a choice, not a cage. And Alara, for the most part, agreed. To be an observer is to stand apart. To witness the intricate dance of life without the burden of participation. It is a lonely vantage point, yes, but one that offers a unique clarity. Or so I believed, before the faces began to shift. Her current obsession was an old, faded photograph found tucked into the spine of a forgotten book, a sepia-toned image of a woman from the turn of the century, her gaze direct, unsettlingly modern. Alara had spent weeks trying to capture the elusive quality of her eyes, a hint of something both knowing and profoundly sad. She felt a connection to this unknown woman, a resonance that transcended time. One night, the dreams began. They were not the hazy, surreal landscapes of typical slumber, but sharply rendered, visceral experiences. She was standing before a vast, obsidian mirror, and her reflection was her own, yet subtly wrong. It would waver, then ripple, as if water distorted, before settling into a different face entirely. A stranger's face. Then another, and another, each one more unsettling than the last, their eyes hollow, their expressions borrowed. She felt a profound sense of loss, a chilling emptiness beneath the shifting visages. Then, the reflection would melt, flowing like wax, until only a blank, featureless void remained. A smooth, pale oval, waiting to be filled. She would wake with a gasp, the phantom chill of the void clinging to her skin. These dreams grew in intensity, in frequency. They bled into her waking hours, faint echoes at the periphery of her vision. She would see a flicker of a borrowed face in the sheen of a wet windowpane, or in the fleeting glimpse of a stranger on the rare occasion she ventured into the small, fog-shrouded town. She dismissed them as residual effects of her vivid dreams, a mind too steeped in its own creative processes. Then came the morning of the charcoal sketch. She had retired late, her hands smudged with charcoal, her mind still wrestling with the melancholic eyes of the woman in the photograph. The studio was left as she always left it, brushes cleaned, canvases covered, charcoal sticks neatly arrayed. But when she returned the next morning, drawn by an inexplicable unease, her easel held a fresh sheet of paper. And on it, a face. It was rendered with her hand, unmistakably her style, yet she had no memory of drawing it. The lines were sharp, almost violent, unlike her usual delicate touch. The face itself was a grotesque caricature of humanity, eyes too wide, a mouth too thin, a forehead creased with phantom anxieties. It was the face from her dreams, the one that hovered just before the final, terrifying void. It held an expression of profound, silent despair, yet beneath it, a chilling emptiness. A face worn by someone, but not truly belonging to them. A borrowed face. Elara stared at it, her breath catching in her throat. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. This was no dream, no artistic eccentricity. This was a tangible manifestation, a breach in the quiet sanctity of her world. The sketch seemed to pulsate with a silent, terrible question. The ordinary world, once a fortress of solitude, had begun to crack. A whisper had turned into a shout, a dream into a disturbing reality. The call had come, not from a distant land, but from the depths of her own subconscious, etched onto paper by her own unwitting hand. And I, Elara, could no longer pretend it was merely a trick of the light. She spent the day in a disoriented haze, the image of the sketch burned behind her eyelids. She tried to recreate it, to understand how her hand could have moved without her conscious will, but her attempts were clumsy, lifeless. The original, however, vibrated with an unsettling energy. It was a beacon, a signal. That afternoon, driven by an impulse she couldn't name, she ventured into town. The air was thick with mist, muffling sounds, giving the familiar streets an ethereal, dreamlike quality. She walked slowly, her gaze sweeping over the faces of the few townsfolk she encountered, the grizzled fisherman mending nets, the elderly shopkeeper arranging her wares, the young mother pushing a pram. Each face, a unique narrative. Then she saw it. A woman, standing by the docks, her back to Elara, looking out at the churning grey sea. As the woman turned, catching sight of Elara, her face shifted. For a split second, an impossible flicker, the grotesque, hollow features from the charcoal sketch superimposed themselves onto the woman's face. It was a fleeting, terrifying vision, gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by the woman's ordinary, unassuming expression. But Elara had seen it. Her breath hitched. The world tilted. She stumbled back, retreating into the labyrinthine alleys, her mind reeling. It wasn't just a dream, it wasn't just a drawing. It was real. The borrowed faces were real, and they were here, in her quiet town, perhaps even within her quiet home. A cold dread seeped into her bones, but beneath it, a spark of something else, a fierce, desperate curiosity. An artist's impulse to understand, to capture, to unveil. She returned home, the quiet house now feeling less like a sanctuary and more like a stage for an unseen drama. She pulled out a fresh, leather-bound journal, one she had intended for her finer sketches, and instead, began to write. Not about art, but about the dreams, the sketch, the fleeting vision by the docks. She documented every detail, every tremor of unease, every chilling whisper of a shifting visage. She would track them. She would understand them. Her quiet life was over. The quest had begun. She remembered an old, crumbling local archive, rumored to hold centuries of forgotten town records, eccentric journals, and local folklore. A place she had never considered visiting before. Now, it felt like the only place to start.